Hello, everybody, and welcome to View from the Post. This is a podcast from pickleball referees for pickleball players with a specific intent of helping you understand rules and the environments, on-court situations that you may come up with. My name is Bob Swisshelm. I am a USA Pickleball certified referee and a member of the APP head ref team.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mike Bumgarner. I'm also USA Pickleball certified referee and the director of officiating for the APP Tour. Thanks for joining us today.
We just came back from a timeout. We did an end change timeout because we're working through the 11 primary responsibilities in priority order of referees as laid out in the USA Pickleball Officiating Handbook. And so, just as we would in a game to 11, we're going to do an end change at six. And that's what we did. So, we just finished the sixth one. We're now getting ready for the seventh. And so, we'll move right on into that.
Yeah, and so at that end change, I was up 6-2. It was 6-1. I'm the banded player, so I'm serving from the right.
All
All right.
right. It's really sad when we laugh at our own geeky jokes and realize that. So,
Yeah.
okay. So we're now on to number six, which is call. No, sorry, we were just at number six. Number seven, maintain control and keep the match moving efficiently. So one of the things that we try to teach referees is that they need to have a court presence. That it is their match. We're here for the players. Remember, our primary responsibility was to interpret and enforce the rules and all that kind of stuff. But we are responsible for what happens on the court, and so it is important for us to maintain control. So if the players are getting uppity or becomes a situation, we try to de-escalate it, deal with it fairly, impartially, professionally. But one of the many things that we train our referees on are how to deal with those stressful situations. And so we spend a reasonable amount of time helping people, referees in training, understand what might happen. You call a foot fault on somebody and they don't believe that they they had a foot fault. How do you address that in a non-draconian but appropriately authoritative manner? And truthfully, this is one of the things that will differentiate a good referee from a strong referee, and then make it much more likely that a referee is going to get selected for some of those premium assignments because as Mike mentioned, he is the director of officiating for APP. I'm one of the head refs for APP, and one of our responsibilities is to choose the people that are being put forward as referees on the live stream matches or on the championship Sunday matches. That's our product. That's what is one of the most visible things. So it's incredibly important that we choose people who can do this, who can maintain control and manage that match efficiently.
Yeah, that's a good point, Bob. And the way we try to understand who, has control of their court, and how they manage their court. So number seven is extremely important, of course. How do you maintain control of your court without, you know, uh, looking like someone that wants to be in charge of everything all the time, right? So, like you said in an earlier podcast, is we don't want to interfere, we don't want to interject in a match, but sometimes we're asked to be pulled into a match, or we make a call that somebody may not like, right? So you hit on it just a minute ago, de-escalation. So we're trying to de-escalate everything to the point where we can have a conversation on what you believe is true on the court versus what the referee may have seen that you don't necessarily agree with. Okay. So really good referees are going to be proactive enough that they're going to know what they're going to say before you even ask, right? So you have um, called a foot fault and you've described the foot fault as you've called it, other than just saying foot fault. What's going to happen if I just say foot fault? What are you going to say, Bob, if you're the player?
Uh, I never foot fault. I
Yeah,
may ask you, well, was it me? Was it my left foot? Was it my right foot? When did it occur? Was it on the push
exactly,
off? Whatever.
exactly. Those are all legitimate questions, right? Because you just said foot fault, but you didn't say as a referee who it was, what it was, when it happened, things like that. So this is what I'm saying. Referees are ready when they see a foot fault, number one, and they're 100% sure that it was a foot fault, or they should be, right? So foot fault, left foot during the volley, foot fault, right foot, launch of the Ernie, things like this. These are all important aspects of making that call to de-escalate before it even escalates. That makes sense?
And we spend a reasonable amount of time training referees to be prepared for this type of thing. We jokingly identify some key pro players who will mess with new referees, and so that's not a problem. I mean, it's just to make referees aware that their demeanor on court will affect the level of respect that they get from the players. And so they have to maintain a professional, unbiased, in control, and non-reactionary response to some of the reactionary responses that you get from players. The other thing, we talked about maintaining control and keeping the match moving effectively, right? Because depending upon the specific situation, you may have players that want to, for lack of a better term, lollygag, or they want to take extra time. The may or may not be appropriate, but the one of the things that the referee is constantly doing is trying to figure out how to move this thing along. We don't want to get into a long procured argument, right? Now, having said that, we also are trained on what is allowed. For example, in a hot, sweaty, dry environment, it is very appropriate for players potentially to towel off or get a quick drink almost every single rally. That is something they have within their right. They can't have conversations with their partners, but they can do that, and that can be frustrating sometimes to their opponent. But it is all something that is allowed, and the referee understands those processes and tries to make sure that they're administered fairly.
Yeah, so when we talk about moving things along efficiently, right? So efficiently is a key word. That means you got to do things the right way and in a timely manner. Uh, so I talk a lot about, or I think a lot about cadence and pace as a referee. So cadence is the calling of the score. Do I do it consistently? Do I hesitate when I do it? How quickly do I do it when people are ready to play? That's pace, right? So referees are trained to look at the receiver. When receiver is ready, they start the calling of the score. So how quickly is the receiver getting ready? And this is what Bob's hitting on here. How quickly can we get the match flowing or keep it flowing? So cadence and pace as a referee are extremely important for players to understand. Now, certain referees may not have the same cadence and pace from one person to another, and that's okay. Just as a player, understand what that might be and understand why the referee is calling the score as quickly as they are during the match. We see it all the time in singles matches where players, after a rally's over, it's hot, they're tired, I get it. And as the match, proceeds, it gets hotter and they get more tired. So there's a lot more time in between the rallies.
Do we
Players
have a shot clock?
No, we have no shot clock. So players will, after the rally over, balls in the corner, take their time getting over there, kick the ball back or throw the ball back, swat the ball back to the other end of the court, completely away from the other player. And we understand, we know what you're doing. You're just trying to gain a little more time. And professional courtesy in my book is okay
Hmm.
in this case. But understand there are some rules and infractions that can be put in place if the referee feels like it's being done all the time and too often. Uh, but for the most part, I think most of the referees have enough patience to say, okay, we get it, we understand. But when the ball is in the server's hand and the receiver is ready to play, then the referee shall call the score, and they should do it as soon as they see that the receiver is ready.
or should be ready, to use a phrase from our handbook. So again, our focus on these calls on these podcasts is really the player perspective. But what will happen sometimes is that we dive down into, well, we're going to
Yeah,
use
yeah,
terminology that is specific to referees, and so we got to stop ourselves from doing that.
yeah.
All right, moving on, Mike.
Number 8, resolve disputes. This is a big one. Um, it's there are obviously arguments and uh, conversations that happen on court that may not necessarily be in the best interest of sportsmanship, but they do happen. So referee is required to understand and how best to resolve that particular dispute. I mean, if we're talking about disputes between two different, from one opponent to the other, or a dispute between a referee and a player or a team, there are ways to resolve the disputes. The best way to resolve a dispute as a referee, in my opinion, is to not allow the dispute to boil to the point that it becomes a big issue, right? Address things quickly. So as a referee, you should be cognizant of the players and what they're saying to each other and maybe nip that pretty quickly.
And one of
But
our upcoming podcasts is we're actually going to dive down much deeper into this to talk with you as the players about what avenues do you have in an unofficiated match or in an officiated match. What are you responsible for? What are your rights? What can you expect out of an unofficiated match and an officiated match, and how can you escalate that? So we're going to spend a whole nother podcast going into more detail on that.
yep.
The next one then is enforcing fair play and sportsmanship by issuing verbal warnings, technical fouls as appropriate. And as well, we're going to have yet another podcast where we talk about the penalty system and what's involved in that. It is very much, you'll find out, discretionary based upon that referees tolerance for your inappropriate behavior. A common example is profanity on court, right? You're not allowed to be profane on court. Uh, Depending upon which referee it is, they may choose to do a verbal warning in one situation or may go straight to a technical foul in another for a different situation. It is the words that you use and the situation in terms of like who heard it, all that kind of stuff are very fluid, and so we spend a reasonable amount of time with referees helping them to think about what their tolerance is. And when we go into this detail, you'll see that it's a graduated process. If you really misbehave as a player, you could get a very severe penalty from the get-go. However, the hope is that the referee, because they're in control and they're moving things effectively, they're keeping an eye out for these behaviors and they unfold a verbal warning, which is like just a slap on the wrist, and they do that more quickly to get to let you know what their level of tolerance is, so it never really escalates to that particular point.
Yeah. So as you said, we'll talk about that a little more in depth, or a lot more in depth, I should say, in an upcoming podcast. But all the rules are out there for a reason, and then there are penalties associated with actions based on the rules. All right. I think you're number 9, Bob.
I was number 9. That's what I
Oh,
just
you
talked
were number
about.
9. I'm sorry. Holy
You're number
Lord.
10. You get the good one.
I know. Thanks. Uh, number 10, and this may come as a surprise to many of the players out there, but number 10 on our priority list
Out
is
of 11.
what's that?
Number 10 out of 11
Out of 11. Yes.
in a
Thank you.
priority order is
Yep, good point. Number 10, rule on line calls when appealed by a player or not seen by a line judge.
wow, that's way down there.
Yeah, it is way down there. You're right. So yeah, it is number 10 on our priority list. Why do you, so some may ask why, Bob, is it only number 10?
You want me, so what about number six? Or look at number six, calling service non-volley zone, and really there the key one is non-volley zone and short serve faults. Where is the referee positioned? The referee position is positioned at the post. That's why we're viewed from the post, right? The reason why we are positioned there is because that allows us to be focused. That's the best line of sight for us to deal with either short serve or non-volley zone faults. And even compared to line call faults or errors, non-volley zone faults are the ones that are most overlooked by players. And so from a priority perspective, we as referees recognize that that is a higher um, eh, priority for us, and therefore we are positioned to allow us to be better prepared to deal with, in this case, it was number six. Now, realizing that, think about where we are positioned. How well are we positioned to be able to deal with line calls on the far sideline or on the baseline? We're not positioned very well for that, and that's why. And then also, who is it that is primarily responsible for those line calls? And that is the player. I think I've answered your question.
No, you have. I mean, just the sheer mechanics of where we're located versus the speed of the ball, where the ball goes out, puts us at a distinct disadvantage when it comes to ruling on a line call. Where the player, in my opinion, is right there. And the player has the advantage to making a line call. I believe that's why it's so far down on the list for priority for us. And when we talk about line calls, we should also include the center line on the serve, right?
Right.
So all the lines, center line on the serve. So, you know, if you're a new player and you don't understand the line calls, I would suggest you dive into the rule book to understand how line calls work. Uh, there's a whole big chapter on it, and we're not going to get into it on this particular call, but it will be on a future
But
podcast
it
for
is
sure.
the fact that this is this far down frustrates many players because they don't necessarily
Oh,
understand it.
without a doubt.
And then so um, Mike is the referee and I'm the player and I'm running for something and whatever and I say, "Hey ref, did you see that?" What are you going to tell me, Mike? In many times.
Uh, no, I didn't see it. Call on the court stands
Right.
many times, but players look at that, Bob, as a cop out,
I
and
agree. I agree they do.
I wish they didn't, but they do, and I think they always will. But understanding players understand it's priority 8 for us. We're not,
And
or priority 10, I'm sorry. We're not necessarily able to understand if it was in or out. And
right.
those are the times that a referee will say, didn't see it,
Right.
call
Now,
on the
I
court
want to
stand.
also make it clear that everything on this list is important and it is
Yes.
a priority. So we're not saying that it's not important, but what we're saying is that there are other things that we need to focus on. For example, referees are trained, you may have noticed this, that a referee standing at the post when all four players are at the post or at the net, their head is still and you don't know it but their eyeballs are back bouncing back and forth from feet to feet. They're not following the ball and they're trained to stay on the person who is most likely to commit a non-volley zone fault. And so if you, for example, you have two players at the non-volley zone and they are defending lobs and smashing to two players that are the baseline, very often that you will see the referee focused on the feet of the two players at the net and not following the ball to the baseline. And so if there's a smash and someone says, "Hey ref, did you see that?" The answer is going to be no, because I wasn't even looking at it because my job, you see that player right there? They're the one hitting the ball, and man, their toe is awful close to the line. And I want to make sure that they're not going to do a push off fault or whatever, because from a priority perspective, that's higher on my priority list than dealing with the baseline line call.
Or a momentum non-volley zone fault,
Right,
right?
right.
So those momentum faults can be difficult to catch if you're not putting your eyes in the right position. That's for sure.
And you made a reference to this earlier about when we somebody challenges us or appeals to us, we are not going to overturn that call unless we are 1000% sure. If you guys want to practice to be a referee, right? Um, have two different things that you're looking at on the far side and move your head, try to move your head and realize how long it takes for your eyes to focus on that. When we're focused on the non-volley zone, we're not moving our head and we're moving our eyes because that allows us to focus much more quickly. But if we're following the ball to the baseline, we're moving our head and it takes a split second for us to be able to focus on that moving ball. And so we understand that that puts us at a distinct disadvantage in terms of really knowing whether or not that ball landed in or out. We're not going to guess. We're not going to guess, which is why in a perfect world you've got line judges who are focused on that and their head's not moving back and forth and they're focused on that, but we don't have that very often either.
Yeah, like you said, we're not going to guess. Now, if we distinctly saw that the ball was, if you appeal to us and we distinctly saw the ball was out, then the call is solid. The ball was out. You
Yep.
know,
Yep.
if we saw the ball in, ball was in. I mean, it is to me it is a yes, no, or can't help you.
Right, right. And and we feel you mentioned earlier that we understand that players think that that's a cop out. There've been so many times that, well, what are you guys doing? If you can't
Yeah,
respond to those, why are you even here?
yeah,
And that's frustrating to us because we talked about being in control and all that kind of stuff, and we don't want to react emotionally to responses that we get. But internally, that I don't know what the right word is. We feel bad for you because we understand exactly why we're not making that call, and we understand your frustration. And we're frustrated as well because we were not able to appeal that appropriately. But we also have to be confident that we know what we're doing. And in that sense, what I mean by that is that I'm not going to let your frustration with my inability to make a clear call to guess, right? If
right.
if if, if I've had to say the call stands 3 times and you get irate with me on that fourth time, I'm still going to let the call stand if I'm not 100% sure. I'm not
Yeah.
going to say, well, okay, well, that was close enough. I'm going to
Mhm.
overrule it. I can't let myself do that because that is not fair, right?
Have you ever had a player tell you, Bob, just make the call, even if I don't agree with it, I'll be happier with you because you made a call.
Not quite in that many words, no.
Right, right.
And it's interesting. The words that we use have changed a little bit, and they continue to morph, right? Because it feels bad sometimes if we say historically. Sometimes we said, "Well, we didn't see it well enough to overturn it," and the common phrase nowadays is, "By rule, the call stands." Um, but we are also trained to say, if we saw it, we will say, "Yes, that ball was in, that ball was out."
Yep.
So that interesting stuff.
All right, what's the last one on the list, Bob?
Last one. By the way, I just want to point out that the game ends at 11, and I'm scoring the 11th point. So you may have been ahead at the turn, but I'm going to win this match.
Well, as it turns out, looks that way, but not normally.
Oh, I seem to remember. This is an insight. The one match that we played against each other a bazillion years ago, I seem to remember that I'm still up on
That's my partner's fault.
that. All right, the last
You
one is
made a bad line call, Bob.
yeah, make sure that the court environment is safe for play. And so, what you will often see is the referees walking around the court prior to the match starting, making sure that there's not any trash on the court, that the net's straight, and all that kind of stuff. This also during play, we as with the players are responsible for calling hinders if there's something that's going on that's inappropriate. So those are all things that we are responsible for. So we are here to ensure the correct interpretation of the rules, but we're also here, we're like flight attendants, we're here for your safety.
Yeah, safety number one priority in my book. Number one. And ensuring the court's safe to play on is obviously what we need to do. A lot of people get frustrated when there's a rain, or we get equally as frustrated when it rains, but we're not going to start playing until we believe the courts are ready for play.
Right.
Uh, right, wrong, or indifferent, safety's number one priority, and we will not start play until things are safe to play.
All right, so we've in these two podcasts, we've gone through the primary responsibilities in priority order of the referees as laid out by the USA Pickleball Officiating Handbook. Hopefully, this helps you have a better understanding of what it is that we are interested in doing and what our role is while we are on court with you. And it's not us against you. It's we're here for all of these things. And as we've mentioned, we're going to do a deep dive into some of these in more detail later on. We're going to talk about service motion violations and how we do that. We're going to talk about how to resolve disputes in officiated and unofficiated matches. We're going to talk about the warning system and the penalty system and how that is applied. So we're really excited. We're having a lot of fun with this, and hopefully you're having fun with this as well. So keep those cards and letters coming. So far, I don't think we've gotten any cards and letters, but please like this podcast, subscribe to it. Send an email to viewfromthepost@gmail.com if you have any specific topics that you're interested in. Again, my name is Bob Swisshelm.
And I'm Mike Baumgartner. So I think this two-part series, Responsibilities of a Referee, I believe gives you a basic understanding or a good understanding of uh, what referees do for you on the court and how things are governed during a match. So hopefully you take away from this and you understand, and we kind of bridge the understanding or the gap a little bit, and and it makes better play for you. So again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on View from the Post.